Hey, this is Natasha, and I am speaking with Genée Robinson, who is a buyer slash luxury manager who offers New York City's fashion forward stylists, bloggers, artists, designers, and avid high fashion consumers an opportunity to support the sustainability of fashion and consign high end items with a phenomenal luxury consignment company called The Real Real. Essentially, she gives clothes a second life. Genée believes that making space for things that no longer serve us, but possible spark joy for someone else, is our social responsibility. She has a background that is an intricate mesh between fashion business and design with a thorough understanding of the mass retail market from her experience as an executive manager at Target to conceptualizing innovative products during her stint as the product developer for casual licensing product at Stance. She understands the product life cycle from a variety of scopes and has an appreciation for the art of fashion. She's also an artist and philanthropist who believes that creative expression makes our world more vibrant. She specializes in fashion illustration and aspires to start a nonprofit rooted in art education. So, how are you, Genée?
I'm doing so well, Natasha. Thank you so much for having me today. I'm so excited to chat with you.
Absolutely. Thank you for being a sister on fire. And right out of the gate, my first question is you have such an impressive background. I'd love for you to share with everyone listening how you became the woman you are today.
Honestly, Natasha, I am still just trying to figure it out. um, I am on this really exciting journey right now of self discovery, and I'm really just approaching every day with an open mind. You touched a little bit about my background, but I attended Howard University. I'm from Washington D.C., and I think that that mix really allowed me to just have a better sense of community and understanding my place from a more broader scope.
Mhm.
Um, but I've just like I said, I've just been very open minded and very open to learning new things and taking risks and trying a little bit of everything.
Okay. Now, were you like, how did you fall in love with fashion and art, and how did you know you wanted to have a career that invoked both?
Well, see, I had absolutely no idea at first. When I attended Howard University, I entered as an education major. I thought that I wanted to be a teacher, but I had always had this secret hidden passion, and I would like sketch, and I had all these sketch journals, but I kept it very private because for me, art has always been this place where I can just kind of escape. It wasn't
Mhm.
until college when I started to feel like a little trapped in my role as an education major that I felt like I needed to explore my creativity a bit more.
Mhm.
And I decided to transfer schools. I enrolled in the fine arts program at Howard University, and it's it's been eye opening ever since. I knew that I was very analytical in my thoughts, but I also had, just a lot of really, you know, innovative ideas. And I met with advisors who kind of guided me along the way, and doors just started to open. And I feel like, you know, when that happens, it's a sign that you are headed in the right direction. Um, so once I finished at Howard, I pursued a master's degree in marketing management. And I was like, okay, well, let's start there. Let's see how we can apply that. And I moved to LA and started working as a retail manager for Target. And I was like, okay, this is great, but like, I don't feel creative enough. So then I pursued this professional track program at the Fashion Institute for Design and Merchandising in LA and met so many amazing people. My professors were just so cool. And I was like, okay, this feels right. And then I took the next opportunity. So it's really just been like leaps of faith and, growing my wings as I fall.
I love it. But I love that what you said, like you were at Target and you were liking what you were doing, but you weren't necessarily passionate about it. So you decided to do something about that. And I think that that takes a lot of guts and it takes a lot of bravery because a lot of people, what do? They just live and they kind of stop being conscious about what they're doing and they're just like, oh, everyone must be feeling this way. But no, you can choose to be happy about your job and you did. So that's wonderful. Now, do you feel like along the way with your journey, how has being a woman like either helped, hurt? How has that narrative been affected by everything that you've gone through so far?
Well, luckily in fashion, I've always been surrounded by a very large community of women. And so I think for me, I was really able to grow as a woman and build very solid relationships with other women.
Mhm.
And luckily, the companies that I worked for were all very progressive, like, in their thoughts. So women were celebrated. And I always felt like, there was some sort of, um, just like a sense of camaraderie with my
Mhm.
other female colleagues. So it's interesting. Like I haven't necessarily had any experiences where, you know, I felt like I was incapable because I was a woman. So I'm really grateful for that because I know that's not the story of, a lot of other women who work for, these like more traditional conservative companies.
Mhm. Okay. And what about your story and your narrative as a person of color?
I think that's where it starts to get a little. I think
Dicey?
that's where it starts to get a little dynamic, specifically in fashion and like the creative industry. Um, me as a woman of color, I can just see how Black culture inspires and influences so many trends and styles and advertisements. And I think the most disheartening part is that when I look around the room, the other designers in the design chairs or like the merch teams or the execs that are kind of coming up with these ideas don't look like me, or they
Mm.
don't look like the culture in which they're, it almost feels like culture poaching. Can I say that? that's,
Yes.
because that's what it kind of feels like. It's like, you know, I I would love to see a one-to-one correlation between the creative ideas that are pulled from our culture and the Black dollar spent. Like I would like to see some sort of, correlation to those who are in the exec roles and designers in the chairs and a part of the merchandise team. And I think it starts with us though, because I will say growing up, I didn't know anything about, opportunities in the art world. Like I just was never exposed to that. So I think that that's a part of my responsibility as a woman in the creative field to kind of reach out to other boys and girls who look like me and say, hey, this is an opportunity. This is a career path. This is something that you can do. This is like a real job.
Absolutely. I mean, that then actually leads to a question based on what you're saying. Do you feel like our community is embracive of the arts and like non-traditional career paths? And if not, then like what do you think is needed to do that so our community can be more embracive of that industry or that those opportunities for our young folks?
I don't think that our community is not accepting to those things. I just think it's more of a lack of exposure. I think that, um, more than any time, I feel like we are supporting our children to be, whoever they want to be. But I think when you look at representation, a lot of our students see like, okay, the accountant, the doctor, the lawyer, or, the NBA player. And like there's this huge gap in between. And there's so many opportunities there that I just felt a personal responsibility to expose children to the arts. And I think that you kind of touched on one of the things that I want to do in my career at some point, and that is offer some sort of program that inspires children to learn more about art and then to also benefit from art education.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah, I completely agree. Growing up as well, I would say my narrative is similarly, I wasn't necessarily exposed to a lot of art, which is funny because I actually grew up in Manhattan and, that's like art central, right?
Yeah.
But, again, it's all about like the culture that you're raised in. And, I think that it wasn't necessarily a priority for my parents. So they didn't, maybe go out of their way to enforce that with me. But I agree with you. I think that there's a tremendous amount that people, young, old, everyone in between, can learn from art, can use it as a part of, therapeutic, relaxing daily practices. It can inspire them for whatever industry they're in. So I think art is very transformative and it transcends other industries. So yeah, I think that if you down the road are able to kind of get into the nonprofit world and do what you're saying and teach young kids, I think that that would be very, very beneficial. So that is one of the many reasons why we're speaking today, because what you are a sister on fire, right? And you are, have this like really awesome career and really interesting path as to how you've arrived here. So when you think of the term sister on fire, what does that mean for you?
Sister on fire to me means someone who is authentic, confident, and real and connected to their community as a woman, their community as a just understands their power and their power to inspire.
Mm-hmm.
To me, that's a sister on fire.
Love it. Okay. Now, who were women in your life that lived up to that definition?
Oh my gosh, I have to start with my mom. I truly believe that education starts at home, and I think she taught me so many things about, just how to be a good person, number one, and how to be successful in whatever I do, and how being respectful doesn't necessarily mean being submissive, and I'll never forget. So this is like a story on discipline and how it has forever shaped my life. Both of my parents are entrepreneurs, so I was lucky to have very parents who just, they were open. They wanted me to try everything. So my mom, of course, she encouraged me to try whatever it is I wanted to do. So I'm like, okay, we were like driving past a tennis court or something. I saw these kids playing tennis, and I'm like, Mom, I know exactly what it is I want to do. I want to play tennis. And she's like, are you sure? And I'm like, yes, I want to play tennis. So what did she do the next day or the next week? We drive to the rec center, and she signs me up for tennis. And so I get all my equipment. I'm out there. And I want to say my first session, I absolutely hated it. I mean, I just thought it was the worst sport ever. I just could not believe that I did it. So I went to her and I was like, I don't want to do this. Like, I hate it. I hate tennis. And she's like, you know what, Genée? Like, I get it. You might not love it, but you said you wanted to try it. And if you're going to try it, you got to go through. You have to push through. She's like, you committed to this season. I don't mind. You don't ever have to play tennis again, but you will be playing it this season. And I've carried that with me my whole life. It's like, whatever you decide to do, you commit to that. And when the season changes in your life, okay, you can go to something new. But in that moment, you're going to give it your all, and you're going to do your best. And you're not just going to give up because you had one bad day on the court, or you thought that it was going to be something different than these expectations that you had. And I am just truly grateful to have someone like her in my life to teach me things like that.
I love that story. Shout out to mom. Great
Yes,
parenting.
she is just she's just incredible. And she also was very big on like community service, and she always went out of her way to help people. And
Mm,
so I really learned the balance between just being a good person but still being very proactive in my own success. Like there was never a disconnect there. And I think sometimes we kind of become a little too self-involved when it comes to like our own success, where we're just like climbing this ladder and kind of forget to reach down.
mhm.
And so I think that she has also instilled that in me as well.
I love it. And so you mentioned something really interesting. So you said that you've carried that lesson forward in the sense that if when the season changes in your life, then you can move forward and say, okay, if you don't want to do something, you're not going to do it. What were things that you do in your life to figure out, when that season is changing? Because I think a lot of people sometimes, kids or adults, right? You do try something and then you're like, oh, I don't really like it. How do you know when the season is appropriate to when it's changing so that you can act appropriately?
I think it's really being able to listen to your own voice. I am introverted in nature,
Mm-hmm.
um, so it's very easy for me to like silence the noise and really dig deep and ask myself how I feel about things. But sometimes it's difficult to do that when you just have so much going on. So I think it's important for everyone to just have some time, either if it's first thing in the morning or like before you go to sleep, or just time in your day to just be still and to
Mm-hmm.
be honest with yourself and ask yourself really tough questions. And that may feel differently to people. Like it may be journaling for some people, it may be, sketching for other people, but it's really time to sit down and explore things that are on your mind that you kind of suppress because of everything else, because of all the noise that's happening around you. And I think that that's really important to just, make sure that you are okay
Okay.
with
Okay.
where you are with where you are in your life, with what you need, with what you're doing, to make sure that it's aligned.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. All right. Now, given that you have, done a lot of great things in your career so far, what would you say to someone listening who's trying to figure out how to have, a career that's in alignment with, something that they're passionate about, as well as something that maybe challenges them and that, helps the community, like, kind of like how you can touch on sustainable fashion, which has like greater impact on our earth, right? And
Yeah.
so how
Yeah.
do we how do people, what are, I guess, like things that you do to help you that can help someone do that, and that finding that career, that niche for themselves, as well as like practices of success that you employ in your own life?
Yeah. So I think, gosh, that's a tough question. I think that it is very important to always think big picture.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're doing something in your life that doesn't necessarily feel like it's 100% right for you, I think that it's first important to think about how, like you mentioned, in my role right now as a buyer for a consignment brand, I am supporting the sustainability of fashion. So I am like, there's this global footprint that I am preserving. And so that gives my role importance. And I think sometimes if you're kind of lost in your career and you don't really know the impact that you're having, thinking big picture can kind of get you through the day. On the
Mm-hmm.
day-to-day level, I would say control what you can control.
Mm-hmm.
And that is really like, be on time, simple, be respectful, say good morning, say
Mm-hmm.
thank you, hold the door for your colleague. Like those are all very simple things within your control. And it allows for a more positive outlook. And people remember that. Like, people remember the person who had the positive attitude, who always made you feel good, who always said good morning. I think that can take you really far. And then I also think that as you kind of explore yourself and figure out, you know, how to align better with your purpose, you know, I think that along the way we kind of are afraid, like there's this fear that kind of sets in, like maybe I'm not good enough for that, or I've been doing this job for 5 years and it feels good and I'm comfortable and I've mastered it. I know I'm not happy, but I know that I can do it with my eyes closed. Mm-hmm. And so I think that it's also important for us to kind of step into that fear. I like to say it's like stepping into this void, like it's this very dark space and we're unsure about it, but we know that that's where we're supposed to go. It's like we feel empty inside, and instead of trying to, like, you know, step inside that emptiness, we look all around us for all these different things to fill that void. And so I think a part of being successful is really stepping into that dark area and stepping into those insecurities and figuring out how to, I think that fear will allow you to be your authentic self, and it'll allow you to come up with creative solutions, and it'll allow you to think outside the box. And those are the things that make you successful. Like, those are the things that add value to any situation. And I think that those are the ways that you, you know, prioritize your success. It's almost like a win-win situation. Mm-hmm. You know, you're winning, you're growing, you're thriving, and you're also contributing positively to whatever situation you're in currently, whether that be temporary or permanent.
I love it. Okay. And with that, I think that people are going to absorb and say, wow, you know, lots of gems dropped. And that's why you're a Sister on Fire. That's what the series is about, is for people to hear from women like you who can say, you know, this is what I'm doing, this is why I do what I do, and this is what makes me successful, and this, you know, this is a part of my story. So how can people, if they want to get in touch with you, they're interested in learning more about you, wanting to possibly work with you, collaborate with you, what's the best way for people to reach you?
I think the easiest way is like through social media. So I am on Instagram. It's my only social media platform, but there, and that's a part of balance. But my social media handle on Instagram is at itsallg, so ITSALLG_. And my account is public, so feel free to DM me any questions. And I'm there to chat. So
awesome.
I'm there to connect.
I love it. Thank you. So Genée Robinson, thank you for being a Sister on Fire. Thank you for sharing your story, being a part of the Sisters on Fire IRL series. You are amazing. We thank you. You're awesome. I love it.
Thank you so much for having me, Natasha. I really, really appreciate it.
Awesome. All right. I'll talk to you soon.